and welcome to Gaming the System, the feminist gaming podcast where we talk about stuff. I've forgotten the proper introduction. There we go. We look at gaming through a feminist lens. That's what we do. I know what I'm talking about. And today we are talking about education and gaming and how gaming can help education, how education has used gaming. Over the last couple of years, obviously, so much more of education is happening online via computers. And, you know, why aren't more educational systems using gaming when there is quite a lot of evidence that shows that people do learn better in a gaming thing? I'll come on to my studies in a bit, but I think it's an interesting area to explore and question, why are we not making gaming a central part of education? Because we all like games. And a little bit of education. So I kind of wanted to start off today by asking you all what sort of experiences you had of games as part of your education. Did you have games in school? Did they ever use gaming as part of your education? What is your memory of, like, I mean, especially if you're a wee bit older, then what is your memory of like computers and school and how that all works together? So I'm gonna throw this over to Alex first. What do you tell us about your experiences of school education, Alex?
I think
gaming.
No, it's all right. No, it's good. I've managed to have about 3 games that I remembered in the build up to this podcast that I got very nostalgic about, and they were all kind of games that I used to play when I was at home. But obviously, they were very much rooted in education and learning. In disguise. And some of them were more overt than others, but one of the very first ones I remember was actually, I think it was a game that came as part of the Windows 95 or 97, I can't remember, this is going back years now, but it was called Microsoft Encarta, and it was basically a form of encyclopedia that had lots of things you could click on and read about and learn about. And sorry, that's a terrible picture. But and there were lots of sound bites, like there was one of the moon landing and the famous speech and stuff. That's, I think, the way things work, so that I will come on to in a second. But they had a game within Encarta called Mind Maze. And essentially, I think it was a quiz, but you had to use the encyclopedia to find the answers and kind of navigate your way through the castle by answering questions on different topics, a bit like Trivial Pursuit, I guess. But I remember slightly being a little bit scared of it because the art style was a little bit creepy. And as a small child, you're just like, I don't know, I don't want to see what's in the next room because it might be scary. But I remember that was always a good one. Then there was The Way Things Work, which was all about machines, and there was a lot of really cute cartoon mammoths that used to help explain the way different machines work, everything from the Archimedes screw to jetpacks. See, it's all coming back to me. And that was really fun. Lovely style in that one. And then there was the Children's Encyclopedia, which kind of flew around the world. I think it was Eyewitness. I think that's the one, yeah. And it was kind of like a point and click thing, but you also had different topics you could look at and learn about as well. And then I remember there were a couple of ones I think my mum bought from M&S on maths and English. And there was this really cheesy game show presenter, cartoon guy, used to tell really terrible jokes at every sort of planet that he went to. And then I think there was one in school, but I honestly can't remember the name of it, but it's in that kind of ilk, sort of cartoony illustrated quiz / point and click adventure type things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of makes it all more, I mean, when you said Encarta, I suddenly was like, oh man, I'd completely forgotten. And obviously, I mean, I actually remember having to go to the school library when I was doing my A-levels and saying, like, you know, come up to the librarian, you'd have to go and borrow the copy of Encarta so that I could go and get Encarta and look up things for my projects and stuff. And it weirdly made it slightly more fun than looking it up in a book. which is strange, but it was. I was like, I remember Encarta Encyclopedia was like, it was basically the Wikipedia of its day.
Yeah, I think literally everyone used it in primary school to do all their homework.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
In the same way that now, if you set kids a research project, they will print out the first page of Wikipedia. In those days, it was they would print out what Encarta said. And I think it was beautifully designed, and I think I actually kind of remember the way things work stuff as well, and it was really sort of infusing. Matt, did you have much use of gaming education stuff in your schooling days?
No.
Okay.
Fair enough.
I'll be brief. Not quite that brief. I was thinking back, other than PE, so for anyone abroad, that's physical education, basically games. You'd go and play a sport, and really there was never really a message behind the sport. It's just something you go and do. And other than that, it was playing one of two extremely simple PC games, trying to hide the fact that you're playing them from the teacher who is walking around stalking. That is almost a game in itself, teaching you how to be subversive. And so I think that was Snake. And this other one that I can't remember, which was the one that everyone played, but then they realized people were doing it, so they got like a spying application, so they could see each one of our screens, no matter what you were doing, and we were foiled. And other than that, does watching when we had the massive TVs that got wheeled in for things. Remember the screensaver on that? That would bounce from one corner. It would bounce all the way around. You'd be going, oh, is it going to hit perfectly in the corner? I suppose that could be thought of some kind of geometry. But other than that, me and my friend in maths used to play a game where we'd smack each other as hard as we could on the leg, and whoever quit first lost. So all of it was, trying to distract from learning rather than learning itself.
Which is, it's a real shame, actually, Matt, because I think you are the youngest member of our team. And one would kind of hope that gaming would have caught on a bit more in education by the time we get to you.
I think Alex and I are in sort of that straddle generation where we remember cassette tapes all the way up to now, rather than kids who have only ever known tablets, like someone who's 18 was born in 2004. That's terrifying. So we're that straddle, which I think it's a really good place to be, to have a broader experience of technology. Because what a time to be alive! Jesus Christ.
I mean, I don't know. I'm always a little bit hesitant about this whole sort of people who've grown up with technology can all work technology. They can't. That's the simple fact. We've been doing job applications for my day job at the moment, and most of the people that we're dealing with can't download an application form, fill it in, and send it back via email, and are all asking for paper copies. Because they just, so I do find there's this idea that just because people are grown up with computers, they know how to use them is bollocks, frankly. And it's one of the reasons I think we need more of this gaming and education stuff to actually get people learning how to use computers. I mean, you say, Matt, about the games you used to play. I installed SimCity, the original SimCity, on every PC in our computer lab in my secondary school. And none of the teachers knew how to take it off or turn it off or anything like that. And also then in sixth form, I remember we had a really nice version of Tetris on all the computers to keep us entertained during things. But again, at least I knew how to work it. Sadly, the teachers didn't. Jem, are you still there, Jem?
She has been frozen for some time.
Are you there, Jem? Yeah, I can hear you. It's just visually. You're just visually frozen. You can still audio. You can. Well, that's all right. You're a little crackly, but
you try to turn off your video and then set it back on again. Maybe that'll help.
But
if she's there.
See, I'm always conscious that none of us are ever going to bother actually editing these bits out, so I'll sort of rather than leave us in deathly silence.
Yes, just roll with it.
In fact, Jen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn you're off and back on again, and hope that sorts it out.
Better?
Ooh.
You do sound clearer.
Oh yes,
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah.
Right. So tell us about your experience with games and education, then, Jen.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I barely had computers. My education. So I do remember. I remember when I was at high school. I'm quite serious. When I was at high school, that was when we got computers. I was in year 7, but it wasn't. I was first year, and that was the year they'd just got the new computers, and there was a computer room, and you could go and there at lunchtime and play on the computers and play little games. I don't remember which games we played, like Snake and things like that, like really simple Pong and very simple games. And I remember there was always a massive queue at the break times and the lunch times, and the teachers had to come in and really kind of like referee because people were pushing people off. And it was my only experience of nearly being bullied, actually. So like this girl, like 3 years older, came in and pushed me off the computer because she wanted to have a go on it, and I just walked out there, walked straight down to the year head, and said like, "Oh, I just got pushed off," and walked back with the teacher and stood there whilst she told the girl, and nobody ever bothered me again after that, so that was fine. But no, as far as school went, we didn't use computers for anything, certainly do any games for learning purposes. But I did do a lot of coding at home, and get magazines and stuff and follow and do coding from there, which I think really kind of set me in motion. I mean, coding is not something that I've ever taken very naturally to, but I struggle with languages in general. So, but I have done a lot of coding for somebody who doesn't code, and ended up doing web design and things like that, and HTML. So I think that definitely kind of set me down a certain path, and that was sort of gamification of coding, when the ways that it was laid out in the magazines and stuff. But it wasn't. There were no educational games in any formal sense in my.
See, I'm willing to accept that the whole, being privately school educated is why I've had more computer access. So, sorry, spot the privilege here. But this is what I was hoping, Jem, you might remember as well, is the BBC Micro, which was this brilliant project that was between computer companies and sponsored by the BBC to bring computers into schools across the UK in the 80s. I think it was released in 1987, 6, anyway, but around there. And it was sort of, the whole point is these were meant to be the computers that schools would have. And I remember, I went to 2 primary schools, and one primary school we used to use our BBC Micro to type up our stories that we'd written and then print them out and make them into a nice little book. And this is the old printers that had like the rolling dotty paper, which was always fun. And then I remember really clearly when in my second primary school, we'd get one session a week where we'd get to go and do stuff on the computers. And one of the things we got to play was a game called Granny's Garden, which I had forgotten the name of it, but I remembered it's that sort of, you're facing a mountain. Would you like to climb the mountain? Would you like to enter the mountain? It's those sort of point and click games. And I looked up some Google images of it, and instantly I saw this. And I remembered this. I was like, oh shit, yes. You had to do this whole puzzles with the dragons. I really remembered that incredibly clearly. And it was this sort of verbal reasoning. You have to work out which one, gets this. Who, I believe the point here is to work out which dragon you should give the orange to, etc. I think there was more complexities to it. Also, Granny, pretty terrifying.
Jesus Christ.
It reminds me of teletext for some reason. All the colours.
Yeah, well, it was the same.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I do recognise that, actually, now you've shown that. So clearly, I know we did have lessons on. I just don't remember any. I don't really remember the games. I recognise that, though.
And then when I was in secondary school, we would do, as you say, coding games. It was a lot about how to code to get that. I remember having to make a turtle take a route around a screen quite a lot of the time, all sorts of things like that. I mean, I know I was always very interested in computers, so I was always very enthusiastic about this. And I remember at school, huge numbers of people go, "Oh God, why have we got to do IT? Oh, I hate IT lessons." Or ICT, I think they used to call it. And it's just like, oh, it's the worst. I was like, this is opening the entire universe to you. There is so much you can do with this, etc. But so many people had a really negative view of it, which I found really odd. But anyway, I was going to put some study facts on you now. But a recent study on UK children found gaming can make children more creative. So 63% of the young people involved said that they write video game related content. So sort of top tips for other players, reviews, doing a YouTube video, stuff like that. Sort of stuff we do, really. 58% of participants said they would be up for writing or designing their very own video games. And so it's like there's huge amounts of kids there who want to get involved in this and stuff like that. And 65% saying gaming helped them imagine them being somebody else. What I found really interesting was this other study which they did, and admittedly this is from a company, it's via a company that makes games for adults, training games for companies. But they found that employees using video games over traditional methods to learn new information increased their attention by 90%. So I think we all know you do sort of learn things from games. What sort of games do you think there are out there that are great examples of how they could be used? Games could be used for education, games that you can learn from. What do you think are games that are a brilliant example of how games can be used for education? Matt, what do you think?
Well, I think there's implicit educational potential and explicit potential. I have found that recently I reflect on things a lot more, and thinking about the implicit lessons that I learned from games, and it was most recently probably The Last of Us Part 2. I've really learned a lot about the cost of violence, and it really, that was a transformative experience for me. So that shows that games can really change people. They have the capacity for that. And that was definitely the purpose of that. On the opposite side of the coin, we've been talking about war games recently and replaying the Call of Duty series, thinking how that taught a generation of young people that the Middle East is just a perpetual war zone. That's just the way things are. And I forgot that in the early Call of Duty games, you actually played as Nazis and Japanese soldiers and Middle Eastern terrorists. And thinking, how fucked up is that? But it's being normalized through that. And then there are the explicit training games that are actually there to be educational. Dreams is a good example of that recently, because it's literally a game engine that anyone can go into, and it uses, similar to the Unreal Engine, it uses blueprints to so blueprints are basically you get like a screenshot, and that is like a physical representation of code, so it ends up turning into a diagram rather than a really complicated list of code. And that's just the way in. Yeah, I think it's the implicit stuff is the most often misused, in my opinion, because that's how so much of the patriarchal and capitalistic propaganda really gets baked into particularly young people, are going, oh yeah, this is the normal world. And how, what did I write? In terms of the the best, like the one I think it's still the highest selling movie ever is Avatar, and the story behind that is corporations colonizing a planet of indigenous people, and that resonated with people the most because that's the stories people go, yes, that's what I believe is the right thing, but then the real world is completely different to that, and what we're sold in games is to pacify us to think, oh, surely everything's fine out here in the real world. So yeah, the implicit message, whether it's conscious or unconscious on part of the game developers, that's a real danger in terms of education. If we're thinking about what we're learning rather than just education has a very like positive default, whereas it can also be negative.
Yeah, no. Sort of,
that was a bit dark, sorry.
Deep and philosophical for me.
That's what happens when you give me an extra week to think.
Yeah, exactly. You know, you get to get into the depth of it. I was just going to talk about the Duolingo bird, but you know, it's fine. Jem, what do you think? Go on. I forgot what my original question was. Oh yeah. Games and educate. What games do good educating?
No, I think Matt's raised a really important thing about with regards to the idea of implicit and explicit education games, and I think that as a parent, one of the things that I've spent quite a lot of time thinking about is ways that I can kind of like provide the entertainment of games with the benefit of the educational and the positive messaging and all of that from those games. And I think that's something that we talk about quite a lot actually on this podcast anyway. I think as far as sort of specifically educational games go, I think well, I'm going to say it because I'm sure we're going to talk about it, but I think Minecraft is definitely high up on the list. Because it's a sandbox tool, so it provides an environment, a game environment in which you can do a huge amount of different things if you're creative and knowledgeable enough to be able to set that up. And you know, lots of people have done sort of awesome stuff. I really wanted my daughter to do Minecraft, but we've talked about it before, and she didn't like. And I've said how much she just didn't like it. She just didn't gel with it at all. I could have spent hours in there, and I know my husband did. Although I used to get really annoyed because I used to get stuck. But anyway, that's a separate issue. And I think things like one. So I don't know whether this counts or not from your perspective, but we got like a robot toy for my daughter, which had a sort of programming element that went on in the associated app, where she had I think it's called Cosmo. I was just looking it up because I was like, I can't remember. Yeah, Cosmo. And that had like a little app that you could use build actions through building blocks. So it was sort of teaching coding, but it was also, it wasn't a game as such, but it was a toy, and it was sort of gamification again. And then the one that my daughter uses the most in school at the moment is something called Caboodle, which is a quiz system, which I think teachers can set up to be whatever they want, and they do quite a lot of that. And but I mean, none of that, you know, with the exception of Minecraft, you know, they're not games. I think that you know, Duolingo, which you've mentioned, I'm currently on like 42-day streak on Duolingo learning Swedish. And and it matters to me. And my daughter's now doing it. She's doing French, and she's competing. She's like, she goes like, oh, I've got to do my Duolingo. So I think, you know, there's a lot of value in the gamification of things, and helping you encouraging you to learn things through that. I have also got a couple of game idea suggestions, but I think we'll come to those a bit later. So
fair
I don't
enough.
know, it's now the time.
There's no structure to this, don't you think? But I know the gamification thing, I think, is actually links back to what you were saying, Matt, about this sort of explicit, implicit learning and stuff like that. Is that I think too often especially when you're a teacher so I am, just for the people who don't know, I am an ex-teacher. I quit in 2016. And when you are a teacher, one of the things, you do want to try and gamify things. You're not unaware that gamification does encourages people. Of course it does. But what becomes very hard is that for a vocab test like Duolingo or for some basic facts, yes, fine, you can usually find a way of gamifying that. But how do you gamify, my specialism was teaching A-level politics. How do you gamify preparing a 45-mark essay? And there are ways of doing it, and there are things you can do, fun tasks. And I'm sure my students don't even remember that as being games, where I sort of set up entire corridors of pieces of paper and mix and match and stick this paragraph, put this paragraph with the right point and the right example and the right analysis. But it is that sort of, games are great for, here's a list of facts you need to learn. But how do we then take them to that next level of the higher level thinking, and how can they be useful in those sort of ways? Alex, what are you thinking?
I can perhaps attempt to answer that question. I have 2 of my most recent games I've been playing. One of which is Horizon Zero Dawn, because I'm trying to finish it before Horizon Forbidden West. And I think I'm looking at that from the kind of learning about emotions and how to manage emotions and understand emotions and what other people might be going through, and just managing like social relationships, because I began my continuing playthrough in the middle of a side quest which I'd completely forgotten about because it's been years, and it turned out it was in the middle of a quest where I had to try and go and rescue someone. They ended up dying, and I had to go back to their lover and help them process the feelings of grief by kind of persuading them that not to commit suicide. So it was dealing with some very heavy topics, and you could, because of the options you have in the conversation, you could choose your response to it. And in a way, it kind of, on a subconscious level, teaches you how to perhaps de-escalate those sorts of situations. Not that like that's what its goal is, but it's not shying away from those topics, which I think is really interesting, even for a side quest. And then on the practical side of things, was one of my most recent Let's Plays for GTS, actually, which is Planet Coaster, which is a simulation game, and I think it's probably similar with a lot of simulation games. It does teach you financial management, resource management, how to manage the land, aesthetics, accessible design, like people management, how to keep people happy, keep your customers happy, keep your staff happy. Lots of managerial lessons there. And just generally, it is quite creative, as well as you mentioned, Jem. Any kind of sandbox is rife for creative thinking as well. So that game is got a lot of transferable skills that you might not even know you're learning, but you actually are, while you're having fun at the same time as cursing people for being too thirsty, even though you just built 2 drink shops and they don't go to. But anyway, and then the other thing I thought of while we were talking is, of course, something that has been utilised by schools and in educational settings, and that is the discovery tours in Assassin's Creed, or the most recent Assassin's Creeds. The one for Assassin's Creed Origins, which dealt with Greco-Roman Egypt, and then Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which was Grecian, ancient Greek world, and then the most recent one, Valhalla, which is Vikings as well. And I believe they actually used the map of Notre Dame to help rebuild Notre Dame after the fire
I remember that.
From Assassin's Creed
God.
Unity. Yeah. So there's a lot of applications there from games in the real world, which is...
I think what I'm hearing, though, from all of us is that I always say this about everything, it's like any form of media, there are good examples and there are bad examples, and it's like you will learn lots from reading the great literature of the world, but you won't learn quite as much from reading shitty romance novels. No offense to anybody who likes shitty romance novels. I'm thinking of one person in particular who's not here, but I know that I know they listen sometimes, so no offense. But you know, it's about those lessons learned, and it's about the quality. A good, high quality game can have so much that brings into it about understanding and empathy. I did just want to take a minute though to talk, because we've sort of briefly touched over a few of them. The sort of games that are meant to make you good at coding. So there's a couple of them. Human Resource Machine, very famous one, which I absolutely love as a game, but I got to a point with it where I couldn't do it anymore. I got stuck. It got too hard. And some of these games can get to incredible complexity. My other favourite one is Automa Chef, which I thought was going to be like, what's it called? Overcooked. I thought it was going to be Overcooked. Instead, it's conveyor belts, and like this here to you guys will probably mean nothing. To me, I'm like, yes, I can kind of see what's going on there, and you have to put all these sort of automatic machines into a series of stuff so it'll produce the meals at the end. And these games, I play a lot of them, and they're all meant to be, they're always like, oh yeah, no, this teaches you everything you need to know about coding. If you can do this, you can code. I'd never bothered really to learn to code. That's like, I wonder how much all of these, it's like, I understand the logic is they're teaching me to be better at logic. If this, do that. If this, do that. I understand that, but it doesn't make me want to code. And I worry that quite a lot of the stuff that we push on to young people and children of like, yeah, they'll be amazing coders if they do that. We could do with just actually teaching coding more. I mean, this is one of my big bugbears, is that the whole education system, well, I'd like to destroy the whole education system and start again. But one of the things that we're not teaching that we absolutely should be teaching is coding. We have after-school coding clubs. We have like, oh, well, if you want to do this. But the entire world is run by computers, and people should know how to work computers, and they're not learning how to work computers. See my story earlier that nobody bloody apply for a job unless I send them a paper copy of an application form. We need to be designing a world where people not just use their phones, but understand how computers work, understand how to create them, can do jobs in them. And we've got such a world-leading computer games industry in the UK. It's where we should be investing. It's where we should be. Anyway, sorry, it's my rant.
Can I just come in, because I completely see what you're saying, and I've had the same thoughts actually, and I would have thought that most education is about teaching people that if you do this, this happens. You know, when you do that, you need to move on to this next step and this next step. And yes, that is a key component to coding, but it's also a key component to many other, cause and effect is a very important thing to understand for many aspects of life. And so I agree with you. I think that I've been very confused when I've picked up some of these things where they go, this is going to teach you how to code. And I'm like, as somebody who has learned how to code basically, but I'm like, how? I'm not learning how to code. I'm learning logic process.
Yeah.
I don't disagree that that's an important thing to learn.
Absolutely.
But yeah, and I also think that, going back to your example about people applying for the job, there is a thing about learning, not just learning how to code, because many people are not going to get into that kind of like behind the scenes stuff, but learning how to use a computer, learning how to work Word or, Google Docs, or, how to use Zoom or Microsoft Teams and all of those things. And that's something that people all students should be learning. And I mean, they are more and more, but, we don't get a lot of gamification around that sort of thing. And I feel like those are the skills that, as we go through life, those are the skills that people need more and more these days. So I'm surprised by it. And I'm surprised by how little games are being used in schools. It's still very much traditional, old school systems.
I've been thinking.
About Matt. I feel you have thoughts to share, which you do.
I've been thinking about you mentioning sandboxes and mentioning like these games that are supposed to teach you coding. And it made me think of one of my favourite sayings, which is you need to seize the means of production for the revolution. And that's what sandboxes are. That's what the roller coaster Planet Coaster is. It's you have this sandbox that you can go and play in that. And then if you put 10 different people into this sandbox, they'll build 10 completely different things, and they'll learn how the things works. And like what Caroline is saying, I'm fascinated by why things work in terms of technology, and I love maths because maths is absolutely at the center of everything. And trying to learn how to develop games in an actual game engine, just realizing that it's not as simple as you press a button and it grabs something. You press a button, it's mapped to a certain endpoint, which is mapped to a fucking skeleton of something that goes on and on and on. But then it gives you like with your job candidates who don't understand how to send something, presumably they don't know that you send them the document. They can open it on Word, fill it out, save it as a PDF. That PDF goes in an email. That email goes to you. You open it. That's the pathway. Whereas I imagine, I don't know how, like, kids growing up now who have only ever had paperless things, do they know that what the package of data is that makes a document, and how that document is transferred? How does their multiplayer game work? How does Fortnite work? How do you get 120 people in this one space thinking, and just giving them that sense of curiosity? Because you can't, as all people who have ever taught anything know, ramming things down students' throats just means they're not going to take it. You've got to give them that open space, and then they'll go and explore it on their own. And it's so good, Jem, that you chose not to. You actually talk to your daughter about Minecraft, because she will find the things that resonate with her. That's exciting.
No.
I'll just say also about Alex and the emotional choices. It puts, so education, like, people only know the world that they've experienced, and games have a way to introduce things like the prospect of someone being suicidal at losing someone, something that a lot of people have no experience of whatsoever. So it suddenly puts you in those shoes. And something like suicide is no one can look at that dispassionately and think, oh, that's just another story. It really, and it gives you that, the player, I was struck then, the agency it gives the player. You can influence this and help someone else. And that teaching of empathy and compassion and understanding of especially things like mental illnesses, because you only know what you can see, and the more games show, then the better. More knowledge is power. Seize the means of production.
Yeah, I was thinking, as I always am, about Rust, and I can't play it at the moment. I don't have a good enough internet connection. I have to at least be allowed to talk about it. So, but I love sandbox games. I love survival games because they are big sandboxes, because there are very little restrictions on what you can and can't do. 7 Days I love because of the fact that it's it's like Minecraft in the sense it's entirely destructible terrain and buildable terrain. So you can remove anything you like from the game, add anything, build anything you like in the game. And that, to me, is the world. That's what gaming worlds should be. You should always be able to build them around you in that way. But Rust early on, and it's lost it for a lot of reasons now, but early on, Rust was a really interesting learning experience in that you could speak to people over voice chat, but only if you were standing near them. So you would be running around this big empty island, killing pigs, building things, gathering stuff, and suddenly you'd encounter a stranger. And you had a choice. You could kill them, or you could hit V and say, "Hi, how you doing? Got any spare pig?" and stuff like that. And you could build these sort of worlds, and people did. If you watch, there's a streamer called Vertigo, who, whenever I talk about Vertigo, I always almost go into this very bad Australian accent, which I won't do because he is Australian, and when you've watched hours of it, and he did a lot of the early Rust streaming, and he did some brilliant videos where he got groups of people to band together against other people. He got groups of people to do really silly games and jump around and stuff because it was an interesting learning experiment. And he's talked about why he doesn't really stream Rust anymore. It's because it basically got taken over by the PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds and what's it called? Costco or whatever it is. You know what I mean? I can't think of letters or words. But anyway, the little bratty children who just want
Roblox.
to shoot everything that moves. Sorry?
Roblox.
No, but yes, they might as well have been.
Similar pair of stupid,
but yeah.
stupid syllables.
But CSGO, that's what it is. There we go. It's just like, but it's all those sort of people ruined Rust, and they just kept pushing the developers to make it more PvP, more PvP, more PvP, and push that. Whereas before it was quite an interesting sandbox world where you could learn. And it's a shame because it has now got one of the most toxic communities, which is recruiting grounds for all of the worst things of QAnon and Menonists and anything else you can think of. Oh, I've forgotten my original point. Doesn't really matter. But anyway, I just wanted to talk about Rust. Alex, why do you think we aren't using games more in education? Like everything's being done online now, and like we've had 2 years almost of online learning. Why are they not doing more games for learning?
I don't know. Is the answer? I think perhaps when everything is so online, it can become quite wearing. Constantly having to engage in learning through like video calls and all that sort of thing. So I can see it from that perspective, where there might be like a threshold that people have reached where they just can't take in any more information. I do feel like or maybe it's just because we've grown up, but it doesn't feel as engaging. Like the content that kids consume these days doesn't have that sort of extra little something about it that just makes it charming. I don't know if it's just literally my childhood nostalgia, just being like, this was better. It was better in the 90s.
You've reached that point in your life.
Yeah, I am over 30 now. So.
No game was better than Granny's Garden ever. That's nostalgia. That's when you start shouting shit like that.
But yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't. I guess it feels very oversaturated, you know. And I think perhaps that a lot of things have got lost.
Yeah.
In a way that they weren't when everything was beginning and being created in the transition between non-internet times and internet times. I don't know.
I think you're absolutely right that there is a definite fatigue of looking at screens at the moment. Me, who I am currently sitting in a room that has 5 screens, 5 monitors of some sort in it, and I love looking at screens. But even I now find myself just going, right, I need proper screen breaks. I actually do. I can't spend all day working at a screen, then playing on a screen and then watching things on a screen.
But that's all much more recent. I mean, there's no excuse really for why in the previous decade these things haven't been developed. And well, I would say there are, in my opinion, there are 2 reasons why this is maybe the case. Is that one, there's something to do with the personality of people that become teachers that just means that they're not also geeky enough to engage with this in a way that they're out there developing this software or asking for this software. And 2, I would say that I've just forgotten what 2 was.
Did you do my thing where you say, right, there are 3 reasons, knowing that I only have 1 or maybe 2?
No, I did have 2. I definitely had 2. Leave it with me, and I'll go. No, it's I just think that they're not gaming, they're not designing for it, and that was it. That the people who do design games were one of the things that we've talked about is how games don't talk to a diverse audience, even though there is a diverse audience wanting to consume the games. They're not providing games for their audience. So I think that is also the problem, that there was this bunch of men making games for men, and nobody was thinking about like, well, the kids might want to play, and they might want to do those things. And that's why things like, Matt mentioned Roblox. That's why things like Roblox came about, because that came out of people actually wanting to design little games for little people. And I know that there are issues with Roblox. I'm not going to go into all of those, but my daughter played a lot of Roblox and really enjoyed it. And there was some really creative and awesome games in there where kids are learning. And the saddest thing about Roblox, in my opinion, is that the developers made a utterly ridiculous communication system that meant that the kids can't actually talk to each other. In an attempt to try and moderate behaviour and protect the kids, they made it impossible for them to write full sentences. Like, words get starred out all over the shop, to the point that they can't actually communicate in any sensible way. So the whole thing is strange in that respect. But that game is user created, in a lot of cases, and I think that shows that there is that need. It just isn't being fulfilled by business, big business, lack of money.
I'm really curious, because unfortunately we're only looking at this from a UK perspective. I'm really curious as if things are different in other countries in the world. If there are, like, maybe Denmark, Finland. I don't know why I'm pronouncing it Finland slightly oddly, but I'm going with it, has the best education system in the world by many measures. And they're awesome. They treat teachers as professionals. They have to have a master's degree to teach. They are respected. Their judgment is allowed to the thing. Children have independent learning programs. Finland's exactly the sort of place, I reckon, where there would be decent games. Because when you said that what I thought your second point might have been, Jem, was why don't we have better use of games in this country? I was going to say Michael Gove, because everything is wrong in this country with education. I was going to say everything full stop. I'm going to say with education is Michael Gove's fault, which is that, we get 2010 when we get the Conservative government back in. One of the things that the Conservative Party hates is
children.
I was going to say teachers, but yeah, children a little bit, but mostly teachers and education in general. And there was this obsession with we have to recreate some sort of idealized Victorian education system, and education should be about rote learning and all the things like, why can't children list all the kings and queens of England? As if that's bloody helpful. As if they can't just look that up on fucking...
As a Google!
Exactly. It's like, what we should be teaching kids is all sorts of more interesting analytical skills and how to develop thoughts and all this stuff, not just learning things off by heart that they can look up. They could look it up on Encarta 20 years ago, for God's sake. So, yeah, I would say Michael Gove is the reason, because, when you say there aren't teachers, and you're right, though, there is a certain, I remember very early.
I only meant that. That was very tongue-in-cheek.
I do remember very early on in my teacher training realising I'm not like everybody else in this room, am I? Because did a lot of that, go to one end of the room if you agree with the statement, go to the other end if you disagree with the statement. And I kept finding myself on my own. But I think there is demand from some teachers, and there are people who want to do it, but teachers have no control over these things and have no control over how they teach and what they teach, which is why I left teaching. And we limit education in this country so badly and limit what people are allowed to do that I kind of hope that it would be the game development companies who would say, look, we can help, we can do things, we can put things in front of you.
I was reflecting on my time at school recently, and I worked out that every day I left my house at 7:30 in the morning and returned home at 4:30 in the evening. So that was a 9-hour day, 5 days a week for the entire school year. And like you say, the reason Finland, now I'm doing it, the reason Finland is this wonderful place is because it's a socialist country. Here, we are slaves to capitalism because our government is corrupt. And that 45-hour week, they don't want children to enjoy themselves, to develop freedom of thought. They want them to either they get chaff, they want people to just be training to be capitalist drones. So that's your yes. That angers me deeply that is inflicted upon children.
It angers me more that, as well as you think you're there for long. Teachers are there 2 hours before you get in and 2 hours after you leave. Nothing is worse than teaching. Anyway, sorry, I've gone off the point.
Can I say one last thing, just because you mentioned games being made by men for men and for nothing else? Back to the implicit bias. So the media people consume, that sets their perspective of what the world is or should be. When all you see is white men in games, that trains everyone who plays them implicitly that white men are the best at everything. But now that this is why even surface level representation is not to be sniffed at, because people, if you get 1 million kids to play a game and they only play as white men, that does nothing. If you have, like with Call of Duty, which I give them props for this, they've got an incredibly diverse range of operators that you can play as. That just normalizes it. And that's where the power of games has it. It can normalize things like things about mental health, rather than it being an aberration. You think, oh, that's weird. Suddenly you see it in one game. If you see it in 50 games, suddenly it becomes normal. If you see a black person, a brown person, an Asian person in 50 games rather than just the one token one, that's really, really powerful and positive change, and I hope that will snowball.
I saw an interesting Twitter exchange. It was about 4 months ago. It was because it was around Christmas, so it wasn't probably 4 months. But it was when Christmas ads started up, and it was of somebody who had, there's these very tolerant, decent people out there who go and argue with mad trolls. On Twitter, and I was one of these very tolerant, decent people. Had seen somebody tweeting, "Oh, you can't have an advert without black people in now. All the adverts, it's only black people in adverts now on television." And so this person very calmly sort of said, "Well, that's interesting that that's your perception of it. Would you be interested in doing an experiment with me?" They agreed. This is so weird that they actually agreed on this, but they agreed to keep track of, literally do a proper tally rather than this is what I think I'm seeing, do a proper tally for 2 days worth of ad breaks. And it became very clear, obviously, once you start analysing, oh, there are actually more white people in adverts than there are black people in adverts. But what they had noticed was, as you say, Matt, there is now slightly better surface representation. I don't think that all supermarkets are solving racial equality by having a black family serving a Christmas dinner, but they are, as you say, it is having a slight difference. And that backlash just from some people are going, "Oh, I'm seeing a bit more representation, quick, the whole world's being changed." And it is.
My would be to say, I would say, if someone said that to me, I would say, right, go on Netflix and go through like the recommended thing, and it will be white man, white man, white man, white men with a white woman in the background. Oh, white woman, a black man. Oh, white man, white man, white man, white man. And then tell me that white people are being erased.
Yeah. Oh, cool. We've chatted faster than last time I looked. We were only half an hour in, and now we're at wildcard question time. It's not that wildcard question, but it is time for the wildcard question. And it's slightly based in education, but you can take this any way you want to. You can think about it in a wider sense and a smaller sense. You can be silly, you can be clever, you can do whatever you like. Get to the question, Caroline. Stop stalling. What is the best lesson that you have learnt from a video game? So what is the most important lesson you have ever... Doesn't have to be the most important, but what is the best in any way you want to take that? Ooh, give you all a second to think. Tell you what I learnt from Rust. Shoot first, ask questions later. It's the terrible thing about Rust. As I say, there was in the early days quite a lot of community, but now every time you get someone new in the chat turns up and goes, "Oh my god, I can't believe you just killed me and took all my stuff," and everybody just going, "Yeah, that's Rust. That's literally what happens." Also, never trust anybody in Rust ever under any circumstances. Just don't.
I can give you a recent thing that I've learned about myself. I've been having an absolute whale of a time playing Call of Duty Vanguard multiplayer. And you know me, I never play multiplayer. And I've been absolutely just enjoying it so much. But then over the weekend, they're trialing this new thing called ranked play, where you participate in 5 very specific matches, and you get points. It's a bit like a football like leagues, and you do your 5 and then you get put in a league. And playing it just completely spoiled the experience for me, because I have an incredibly toxic relationship with competitiveness that I've had for a long time. Because I haven't been doing any competitive for years, this was really a traumatic trigger going, oh, fuck, that is a terrible way to like live, having this terrible, like, people that get so competitive. But competitiveness is a very patriarchal, like, it's something where particularly men are instilled with. You need to fight, you need to be the best, because men are the best. You need to be better than everyone else. You need to be an alpha male. And that, along with, I only realized this yesterday, that laziness is another thing that comes all the way down from the patriarchal gods to tell us, no, you should be doing more. You should be doing more to assist the patriarchy. Also, I'd like to, my theory on why the Conservatives hate teachers so much is because they went to public school and the teachers tried to tell them what to do. And they always thought they were better than teachers, like with Boris Johnson and his like school, like his behaviour review. And he says, Boris Johnson seems to think the rules don't apply to him. And so he's been that way the entire time.
I think to remember as well, private school teachers aren't qualified teachers, they're academics, and therefore they know nothing about teaching. Anyway, she says, insulting another big group of people. Alex, what's the best lesson you've learned from a video game?
Well, mine's going to be hopefully a nice feel-good lesson. And it's not true for every game or every situation, but I think the thing that comes up most often for me is that gaming has taught me the skill of perseverance and adaptability. For literally every boss fight I get stuck on, I'm like, I'm never going to do it. And you just have to think about, maybe if I tried it this way, or if I tried getting rid of these guys first, or thought about using a different weapon, or maybe coming in from up high, or all sorts of different things. There's always a way of figuring it out and beating the boss and continuing with the game and progressing. So yeah, definitely the skill of perseverance.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, and that is so important, and something I never used to have actually with games. I used to give up on them so easily whenever I got stuck. My partner, however, is extremely good at perseverance, and having seen him doggedly not give up for hours and hours and hours on something he's clearly not even enjoying anymore, we've reached a happy level between the two of us, a happy medium. Jem, what's your best lesson from a video game?
Stop and smell the roses. It's literally like, just stop and look around and take it in, because, you know, whether it's a virtual environment or the real environment, there's always something to see that you hadn't noticed, and if you look hard enough, you're just going to find even more things. So yeah, and there are so many games where I do that, and I am also playing Horizon Zero Dawn at the moment, and you know, as games go, it's extremely stunningly beautiful. So it's just so nice. Unfortunately, there's too many like aggressive monsters around to stop very often.
Yeah.
So I do tend to spend my life sprinting, but yeah, that would be nice.
I've had that in Elder Scrolls a few times, actually, doing the like, oh, isn't this beautiful? I'm just going to look at this scenery, and then something's just stabbing me. It's just like, oh, for God's sake, just leave me alone. I want to look at the scenery.
Trying to do a screenshot.
Well, clearly we could talk about education for days, but we are out of time. And so I don't think I have to say anything specific other than thank you, Alex, Jem, Matt, for talking with me, Caroline, about education and gaming. We are all over all the socials, all the podcasty places. Like, share and subscribe, leave reviews, do all those things that you're meant to nag people to do. And hopefully soon you'll be able to check out our new fancy website, but I won't put any pressure or jinxing on that. And yes, thanks for listening. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed that episode of Gaming the System. If you want to support us, you can donate to us through our PayPal by sending it to wearegamingthesystem@gmail.com if you want to send us a one-off donation. If you want to donate to us monthly, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/gamingthesystem. Until next time, bye-bye.